Hey guys, it's me, Caitlin, and welcome to the final part of my series, How Dressage is Related to Ranch Riding. So in part 3, the previous video, we talked about how the rider's body control is important throughout the pyramid, and today we're going to talk about how to use the pyramid and apply it to your ranch riding maneuvers. The maneuvers we're going to talk about today are the turn on the haunches, the side pass, and then the lead change or a simple change. And why is this important for your ranch riding? Well, number one, it's going to, in my opinion, help you learn how to break each maneuver down and learn how to better communicate it to your horse. And I also think that it's good for troubleshooting. You know, if your turnaround isn't scoring that great, you can go through the pyramid and see maybe which part of it you're lacking in, and then you can work on that. So it helps break the maneuvers down, makes it easier to understand, and also easier to teach. So, and then I think the most important part of it is it's going to make for a more finished maneuver, which is also going to give you a higher score in the show pen, which is the reason we're talking about this today. So the first maneuver that we're going to dive into is the turn on the haunches. So obviously, turn on the haunches is pretty self-explanatory. The hind end stays still. The front is going to move around the hind end, and it's a form of a pivot. You know, we're not super worried about speed right now because we want to make sure we have the foundation of the maneuver correct, and then we can add speed later. So just a demonstration. I'm going to do a turnaround to the left, turn on the haunches to the left. So as you can see, her right front is swinging across, hind end staying still. Cool. And now we'll do one to the right. Right front swinging across, hind end stays still. Cool. All right, so the parts of the pyramid. So the first part is going to be rhythm and relaxation. So obviously throughout any of these maneuvers that we're going to talk about today, we don't want your horse to be anxious about any of them. We want them to be relaxed and not worried or concerned about any of them. And then the rhythm portion is going to be your tempo. I'm sure you've seen a lot of horses, you know, start off super fast and then they kind of fizzle out towards the end if you're doing more than one, you know, revolution. So we want that tempo, again, to stay the same, and we're not worried about speed right off the bat. I would much rather have a slower, correct turnaround than someone try to add speed too soon and then the maneuver falls apart. So pay attention to that when you're practicing. And then second part of the pyramid is connection. So connection to me is how you're communicating to your horse, how you're connecting to your horse through your aids. So your hand, your leg, your seat. So for my cue, we're again trying to move the shoulder. So when I'm cueing this, my foot is going to be a little bit forward towards the cinch. You don't want it back towards the hip because then you're telling your horse to do one thing rather than you're miscommunicating to your horse what to do when your leg's not in the right position. So for example, we're going to do a turnaround to the left. I want my horse to go to the left, so I'm going to open the door to the left. My left leg comes off, my left hand opens, my left seat bone comes up off the saddle, and my weight shifts into my right seat bone. My right leg goes on towards the cinch, my right hand comes across, my neck rein comes on, and she's moving away from the pressure of my right side, and she's pivoting. So again, if you're not opening that door for your horse to go that way, you're not communicating properly to your horse. You know, you might be pushing as hard as you can with your right side, but if you don't open this door and allow them to go that way, then, you know, that's not communicating correctly. So to the right, again, my right side's going to open, my weight shifts into my left seat bone, left leg goes forward towards the cinch, left hand goes across, neck rein is on. Cool. All right, and then next, impulsion. So Your impulsion is your power. That's your forwardness, and granted, we're not necessarily going forward in a straight line, but your horse still has to have power and a big step to be able to execute a proper turnaround. So if your horse doesn't move willingly off your leg, if they don't move forward, just on your flat work, then they're probably not ready for a turnaround. So again, if you don't have that impulsion, your horse isn't going to stay soft. Their head's going to come up, they're going to get hollow in their back, and they're not going to be able, they're probably going to get their front legs tangled up, and they're probably not going to plant on their hind end. So again, having that power, having that softness and impulsion in your turnaround is important. All right, and then straightness. Again, we want all 4 pieces of the horse to be aligned. So the 4 pieces I'm talking about are the 4 points, 2 shoulders, 2 hips. Those are the 4 points that I'm really concerned about. And granted, we're not, again, traveling in a straight line, but your horse still has to be straight and balanced through the turn on the haunches. So if you overbend your horse, which in my turnarounds, I like my horse's nose slightly tipped the way I'm going. But if you were to overbend, like see how far her nose is bent, and then I go to ask her, I'm putting my right leg on, she's just gonna, she might do it, but her hips moving, hind feet are moving around. And yes, she is. Now watch the difference if I let her nose come out. She's moving way freer. Whoa. And same thing this way. I'm gonna pull her over, bend her to the right, try to do a turnaround. And her hind end's not planted, she's not straight. Now as I open that hand and I take that bend away, that turnaround becomes a lot more fluid. So that's your straightness. You don't wanna pull them through with the right hand, you just wanna guide, and again, just tip that nose to the way that you're turning. So the final part is gonna be your collection. Collection is important because we need our horse to be soft. We need them to be rocked back, sit back on their hocks. Again, we want them to round their back and kind of use themselves, not get hollow, head up in the air, mouth probably open and gaping. Good collection, again, comes from your flat work. If you can't pick your horse up and have them stay soft, they're probably not ready for a turnaround. All right, now the next part that we're going to talk about is a side pass. So if you break your side pass down, it mainly breaks down to being able to move the hips and the shoulders. So if you can't, push your horse's shoulders around, and you can't push your, we want to be able to do a turn on the forehand. I'm going to push her hips around. If you can't do either of those things first, then you probably shouldn't be working on your side pass. Again, your side pass is a lateral movement. So a lot of times you have side pass over poles, side pass to your gates in your trail classes. So again, we're basically breaking it down. We're moving the hips, we're moving the shoulders. Again, with the pyramid, your tempo is important. You don't want to start off, super nice and clean, and then all of a sudden your horse fizzles out and is barely, crossing its legs underneath of himself towards the end of your side pass. You want that tempo to stay the same and consistent. And again, we don't want our horses to be anxious about the side pass. We don't want them to think they're going to get in trouble every time. We don't want that in any of these maneuvers. And then your impulsion, again, that power. If you aren't able to, like I said, move the shoulders and the hips individually, then your horse probably isn't ready to put them together for a side pass. We need your horse moving willingly off your leg. This is very similar to a leg yield that you would do, and I think your horse should probably be able to do that first before you apply the side pass. And then your cues for the side pass. So again, we are going to show an example of going to the left. Again, I want to open the door to the left. We want our horse to be able to feel free to go that way. We're closing the door to the right. Again, my weight's going to shift into my right seat bone. and my leg for this position, or for this maneuver, is going to be right behind the cinch because we are moving the rib cage and the whole horse laterally. Again, if your leg's too far forward, too far back, you're probably not giving your horse the right cue. You're not communicating to them properly. So again, watch, my left leg is off, my left hand opens, and she's gonna side pass to the left. Back her up just a smidge. To the right, weight shifts into the left seat bone, right side opens, left leg goes on. Oh. All right, again, this is this would be a maneuver where you do want your horse perfectly straight. A lot of people want to tip their horse's nose away from the way they're going, but that's not actually a true side pass. That would be more along the lines of like a leg yield. So as you're working towards this, that would be, stage one towards teaching your horse, like I said, would be starting with the leg yield. And as your horse gets a little more fluid through the movement, you want that horse to stay straight totally through their body. We don't want their head tipped one way or the other. You want them perfectly straight. All parts of the horse is going to stay aligned. And then collection. So as I stated earlier, the side pass is a lateral movement because we're moving side to side. Again, we need that collection because we need your horse to stay soft. We want their back round. We want them to sit back on their hocks and stay soft and collected. So things to look for, if you can't move your horse willingly on your flat work, and if you can't pick them up and them stay soft, then they're probably not ready for a side pass. A lot of times you'll see people do side passes on the fence, which is a great way to start teaching it to your horse because it automatically gives them something to follow and it keeps them straight. And again, I like to have my horses leg yielding before I teach them the side pass, because if they don't know how to move away from your leg, then your side pass is not going to be of very good quality. All right, the next maneuver that we're going to talk about is the lead change, or the simple change. So in my opinion, your horse should be able to trot around at a figure 8, be able to change their bend through the center, quietly, softly, move off your leg willingly. You want to be able to do that at the trot and the lope. Obviously at the lope, you will complete a simple change in the middle as you change bend. So I'm going to go take her out here. We'll trot a couple. Now we'll complete a couple at the lope. Straighten her, change the bend, and lope. Straighten, change the bend, and lope. ahead and break the lead change down. So rhythm and relaxation, again, we don't want the horse anxious through any of these maneuvers, and we need to be able to maintain a consistent tempo throughout the lead change, and before and after the lead change. Again, I'm going to switch around a little bit. We're going to talk about that impulsion. Your horse needs to have enough power to complete a lead change, so they do need to be moving relatively forward. They need to go forward when your leg goes on, and they need to have enough power to basically execute a proper flying lead change. So those two, I think, kind of go hand in hand. Your connection, so your cues. Again, as you're loping around on the left lead, you should be sitting in your outside seat bone. You're keeping them soft, bent around your inside leg. As you go through the middle to change, you're basically just giving them a cue for the opposite lead. So if you're changing from left to right, you're going to switch your weight to the opposite side, give them a little bit of that, the leg that you would cue, and they'll change their lead. So again, your leg, seat, and hand aids are important. That connection is important with your horse throughout this, because if you don't give the proper cue, or if you're unbalanced or sitting too far on one side or the other, your horse isn't going to change their lead. Straightness. So again, straightness doesn't necessarily mean that you're traveling in a straight line. As you're, loping up to your center to complete the lead change, your horse should be bent. They should be balanced on all four corners, and they should be soft, moving off your leg. As you come directly through the center, there will be a couple moments of straightness. And then as soon as you go through the middle, you're going to change your bend, and that's when you complete your lead change. So that's the straightness that's important. Again, your collection is huge in a lead change because your horse needs to be soft. They need to be sitting back on their hocks, using themselves properly. They can't be hollow, throwing their head up in the air with their mouth gaped open. So you need to work on that softness and collection, and having a good half halt on your horse is important for your lead change. So we'll see if we can complete a couple here and see what we got. So as you can see, she's a little sticky on her left to rights. It's pretty hard for her to sit back on that one hop. So that's why she gets a little bit hoppy in that change, but we're working on it. Again, it's progress. But doing a ton of simple changes is crucial to your lead changes, your flying lead changes, and not pushing your horse. You shouldn't have to kick the crap out of your horse to get your lead change, because again, that makes them anxious. And I cannot stress enough about doing a ton of counter canter work, riding your horse through the center, getting rid of that anxiety, and making sure your horse knows that there is a cue to change the lead. It's not just when they cross through the center. A lot of horses just want to volunteer a lead change because they think that it always happens in the center, but teaching your horse to wait for your cue and to not be anxious about the center is incredibly important when you're doing your lead changes. So again, I think knowing how to break down each of these maneuvers is super important to be able to communicate them to your horse properly. It takes a little bit of time to learn the technical parts of it, where your position's supposed to be, where actually your horse's proper footfalls should be before you even start asking your horse to do it. And I think in the end, taking your time with these, building that foundation, doing your flat work, and making sure that kind of training is, very, very good before you start teaching these maneuvers is important. So Again, thanks for watching, and be sure to click on the link below. I'll leave it in the comments, and you can join my email list. And I look forward to bringing you some additional training videos. And thanks for watching.